a Bush-appointed judge as to the Superior Court, I think, and then was elevated by Barack Obama. So to the extent that we know any of his politics, he's okay with the Federalist Society, or was. He has refused to lift the order enjoining Trump from using the Alien Enemies Act to deport immigrants. And that doesn't mean that there aren't immigrants being deported. It's just that they can't do it under the auspices of the Alien Enemies Act, which affords a lot less due process. And here is the fundamental problem that the Republicans and really the anti-immigrant folks have in terms of their fantastical solution. And that is to deport all immigrants. And that is that we don't have the capacity to process them. And certainly part of like the Biden immigration bill, there's a lot of it that I didn't like. But one of the things that was good was we need more money to have more magistrates to assess people's claims of asylum. I also would have liked to loosen those claims. I think having immigrants in this country is healthy for us, both from an economic standpoint and just broadly societal standpoint. But here is Brian Kilmeade unwittingly understanding the dilemma that is being faced and then basically saying like, hey, let's throw out all one of the fundamental principles of United States society.
Asking that in order to send them to El Salvador, you have to have proof that they were in a gang, or is breaking the law and entering our country that's not enough.
But the president is saying under the act that you don't have to show, you don't have to do this due process. So you have a constitutional right that is actually they are afforded to illegals in this country. We should revisit that. But then you have
hold on for a second. We should revisit the constitutional rights that the so-called illegals have in this country. We should. I love how you throw off the Constitution. We should revisit that. Okay, let's revisit that. How do we go about revisiting that constitutional right?
I'm going to pretend I'm taking it seriously, but I'm going to, say we'll
revisit it.
Right, and that's what's incredible about this is they've blown past the pretense that we were under in the Bush administration that like, okay, well, if we're going to violate their due process rights, let's at least keep them overseas in Guantanamo Bay and not give them a trial or like just detain them indefinitely. Now, if you're on U.S. soil, but you're not a permanent U.S. citizen, apparently you don't have constitutional rights, according to Fox and Friends, which is news to a lot of legal scholars.
Let me just correct you. If you are suspected or accused of being a non-citizen, because we don't know.
Right.
Like part of due process, the reason why you have due process is not just because it's fun to say, it's because you want to know that the people that you are subjects of your criminal, of your, your prosecutorial actions are actually of the class or have done the thing reasonably assuming that they have done. That's what due process is for. But we should revisit that. But go ahead.
They are afforded to illegals in this country. We should revisit that. But then you have a competing act that is saying, hey, if someone is a part of a foreign terrorist organization, that you don't have to give them due process and they can be deported. Now, the agents that I talked to...
They have to prove that they were actually in Nicaragua or MS-13? Or
exactly. And so what the agents are saying is, because you hear all these activists keep talking about the tattoos. We're not just talking about the tattoos. Right. That's just one of the elements. We sat on their house, and part of the reason why we don't want to reveal some of this information is because some of the people that got the information are undercover. So if we start bringing out our sources and methods, we're going to burn our sources that are still within the organization.
That's a great point.
It's not a great point. Then conclude your investigation. What is this?
We need to have the secret moles inside the sleeper cells.
Yeah, we don't want to give away the secret.
To prevent them from wait, what? Why don't you just, I don't get it. Why wouldn't you just round them all up?
The sources and methods of one of these goons looking through like images, drinking a Mountain Dew, being like, yeah, I think that's a terrorist because I saw a crown tattoo. Please.
You don't understand what they're doing, Matt.
Eating Cheetos, being like, yeah, it looks like a terrorist.
Yeah, round him up. That's what it is.
With your law enforcement background, especially. But I also think it's not practical to think that we can do due process on 8 million people.
No.
There's 22 million people here, and minimum illegal already, just in the last 3 administrations.
Pause
and
it for a
there's some
second.
people that got.
Now, the numbers are 23 million now it's up to?
Total, I guess, is what he said.
I don't think so.
He said 8 million there, and then I mean,
Go back a
but
little
Kilmeade
bit,
said
but-
22 million at a minimum here illegally, which is not the number that.
But okay, let's assume it's 23
cited.
million that are here illegally. Like some have overstayed and this and that. They're claiming that if you're a member of a terrorist organization, all of a sudden this gangs have bumped up to terrorist organizations now, as opposed to criminal organizations. We can't reasonably do due process. Well, then how do you know these people are the people that you say they are?
Maybe it's time to tell.
Trust us.
Maybe it's time to tell all the Republican voters who've been gassed up about mass deportations that actually all that shit was lies for campaigns. It's not feasible.
And I was suspicious that this was the case, but you look it up. You just do the simple math. There's around 12.8 million green card holders living in the U.S. The estimates in terms of people who are here having crossed the border without documentation is around 11 million.
Oh,
So-
green card who have overstayed?
No, just green card holders. So that total would, the rough math would be
So
what
they're adding up legal.
That's what it seems like. Is that right? Like my math?
I don't know.
12.8 plus
my
11?
understanding is that half of the undocumented people in this country are actually here, came here with a visa and then overstayed. And the other half came across the border, north or south, or by boat or whatever, without documentation.
I don't know if that's the number that Kilmeade is describing, but all of the figures that I have seen in terms of people who are here and technically what they would call illegal immigrants would be anywhere from 8 to 12 million people. It's around 11 million is usually what's used right now. If you were to do that math, that would be an extremely scary escalation to add green card holders. to that.
even
But
if
we're
it's-
already seeing it. We're already seeing green card holders being deported and detained and attacked without due process.
Well, that's because they were really mean on social media
To Israel?
to Israel. But here's some bad news. Even if it's just 8 million, you will also not be able to provide due process for them in any type of reasonable time with the resource that we dedicated towards it. And this is it's the same thing they're doing with Social Security. We break the process in delivering these things and then say these things are not things that we should have.
It's because some of the people that got the information are undercover. So if we start bringing out our sources and methods, we're going to burn our sources that are still within the organization.
That's a great point with your law enforcement background, especially. But I also think it's not practical to think that we can do due process on 8 million people.
No.
There's 22 million people here, and minimum illegal already, just in the last 3 administrations. And there's some people that got through with Trump's administration. If we're going to give these guys a day in court and a lawyer, we can't do it. They don't deserve it. Our system doesn't need to be double burdened. And I would just love to see the same curiosity, anger, outrage about the millions that came here at our border. You found the NGOs.
Yeah.
You couldn't get into the building.
So true.
But they were sent into Westchester, small towns into Pennsylvania, and they're unloaded, and we don't know anything about them. Where was Margaret Brennan and who's ever hosting Meet the Press today?
Welcome.
Where were they? Curious about what's going on. How do we know who's landing in the middle of the night? How do we know who's been put into our school systems then?
Pause it. Maybe you should have some type of due process. I mean, what do you mean? How do we know?
Expand the bureaucracy.
Right.
Were they flying in invisible jets that are run by some type of like fourth party? Give the money, provide the capacity to our immigration system if you are concerned that they don't know who these people are.
I mean, look at this image. Look at this. Just put this screenshot up. I mean, what images does this look like? It's some of the darkest periods of our history. Men with shaved heads, bowing their heads, being surrounded by highly militarized
Put on
police
display.
forces.
This is all for display purposes.
There are around 700,000 Venezuelan migrants who were in the country prior to, Trump getting into office. That's the estimate. Tren de Aragua, that's a few hundred are the estimates, but even if you wanted to include all 700,000 Venezuelan migrants who are here, the total that Brian Kilmeade is talking about vastly exceeds by almost just like incomprehensible portions, the number of criminals that are here, which means that they are basically classifying all immigrants as criminals.
Right, and then saying it's not just that they're gang members, it's that they're terrorists, because you can't just say, because it's crazy how much they are aware, obviously, of the fact that if you said, these people haven't done anything wrong other than seek a better life in this country, people don't want to see them sent to a gulag.
Yeah.
That's why Sagar was sort of dismissive of it on Breaking Point, saying like, well, who's saying that? The ACLU? You think none? I mean, even if one of these people is that innocent, this is a crime against, it is, even if they're all guilty, to be honest, sending them to a foreign gulag by one of your fascist sort of like buddies is, it's despicable.
And look at the comparison how they treat the January 6thers who were on video doing what they did versus just presuming criminality because people are Latino. MS-13 was also cited there. That started in LA. In a 80s, in a prison. We have prison gangs all across the country. We're going to classify all of those as domestic or as foreign terrorist organizations, even though they originate in the United States.
Tren de Aragua also started in a prison, which is just a good thing to remember for folks who think that the solution to all this stuff is locking up people in large numbers.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.